Turning now, like I said, to the war in Iran, constantly evolving these last few hours. So are we moving toward a major peace deal or a major escalation? U.S. Central Command forces began launching more self-defense strikes just hours ago against multiple targets in Iran. President Trump told a reporter from Fox News that 49 Tomahawk missiles were used to hit targets inside Iran. It's close to 40 miles from Tehran. And at the same time, U.S. fighter jets reportedly took out these these radar, these air defense systems in the southwest part of the country. But the bombings probably won't continue much longer. The president also announced that the bombings would end shortly after reportedly top Iranian officials called to ask him to halt the latest attack. I believe they've kind of countered that. It's very hard to believe anything coming out of Iran, though. However, Trump did promise the bombing will continue if a memorandum of understanding, an agreement, wasn't reached. Now, the new developments come just days after Iran allegedly shot down a U.S. Army Apache helicopter near the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. says the pilot survived, but the U.S. responded with what the Pentagon called proportional strikes on Iranian military targets. Now, there's still back-channel talks that are happening through regional mediators, but a full peace deal, I don't know. Does it remain elusive right now? Iran's ambassador to the UN said today, quote, no sustainable deal can be reached with the U.S. through threats, intimidation, or the use of force. Iran has never negotiated under threats, will never submit to pressure or coercion. In the past few months, there have been multiple moments when the White House suggested that a breakthrough would be within reach, but we've seen this fighting continue. Now, Iran striking back tonight, targeting U.S.-linked sites in Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan. What does this mean for the average American, right? That's the big question. Even though oil prices haven't skyrocketed to the worst-case levels, they haven't. The war has pushed energy costs higher, kept pressure on gas prices, raised fears about inflation. Much of the world's oil moves through the Strait of Hormuz. Markets are also reacting to every escalation. So I want to talk about what this means, and I want to bring on my guest to talk about this and what we could expect. I want to bring on Hal Kempfer. He's a retired Marine Corps intelligence officer with 24 years of service, spent much of his career providing high-level intelligence support to military leaders across service, joint coalition commands. He's also host of the popular Strat podcast. Always good to see you. How much of this is an impact to Iran? How much does this hurt Iran, these attacks? And despite what they're saying, does it bring him closer to the negotiating table?
Well, Jesse, what it does is it goes after their offensive capability. It's going after specific sites tied to the Revolutionary Guard Corps, radar sites, command and control, places where they can launch weapons. It's not going after a society-destroying thing. We're not taking out, for example, power plants, which was something that was discussed for a while. But it is very specific, and it's being done in an interesting way. I kind of had to stand back because we did the strikes, and then the president says, okay, you're going to sign the agreement. And he says, if you don't sign the agreement, we're going to do some more strikes tomorrow. I found that to be a very interesting negotiating strategy. I'm going to say that's a little coercive. But then the other side is, I would say Iran does respond to coercive diplomacy like that. So it might be what was needed.
But they're so hard to predict. They're not a reasonable actor. It's like they don't care about their people, which does bring another question. I'm talking about the regime, of course, not the people. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing, right? When the president says the U.S. could hit Iran very hard if there's no deal, what is that next step? Is it the power plants?
Well, that would be the next step. That would be where you start going after some critical infrastructure. Dual use, yes, it impacts the military. It's a lawful target under international law. But it would also be something that cause societal impact. You start taking out power plants around, say, for example, Tehran, that's going to have a huge impact. Of course, the fear is if we do that, that uncorks the Iranians to say, well, let's go ahead and hit some of these critical infrastructure sites around the Gulf. And I'm particularly concerned about things like desalination plants in the Gulf states. They might try to target those. So there's this tit for tat, this back and forth stuff that goes on, but it could be a quick escalation. So that would be to go that direction. We haven't gone there yet.
Hal, have you seen the back and forth? The Strait of Hormuz is closed. It isn't closed. Iran's saying one thing. What do you think happened there? What do you think's going on there?
I think it's always been open a lot more than anybody admits. One of the things they talk about is they show up the windward plot, the map up there. It says, oh, look, there's no ships going through. Those are ships broadcasting AIS, Automated Identification System. They are told, this is something the IMO says, if you're in a high-risk area, you need to make a decision on whether you want to broadcast that, because they use it for targeting. So there's no ships that have been broadcasting AIS. They turn it off, and then they've been hugging the coast of Oman. Apparently, that's the U.S. Navy's preferred route, and getting them out of there. Interestingly, that's not too far from where the Apache helicopter went down.
Right.
But I think there's a lot more ships. I've been hearing 100 or more per day that have been getting through the strait at various different times.
That's a good thing. By the way, going back to strategy, going back to what is Iran doing? So if they did shoot down this U.S. Apache helicopter, they're attacking these sites, these U.S. sites in neighboring countries. What is their strategy?
I think their strategy is kind of haphazard. I don't know. It's to intimidate these other countries. You go back to right at the beginning of the war. Why did they suddenly attack all these Gulf states? I mean, these are states that they had pretty good diplomatic relations with, and they attacked them out of hand. And the massive turn of all these states against Iran was truly stunning. I've been over in the Middle East quite a bit. I've never seen them turn on another country like that, and turning the same direction the U.S. is so quickly. So I think their strategy is very poor. I think what they did this time doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right.
Although I will say this, I am not sure if that drone was intentionally hit the Apache. There is a very good chance that was a collision. The Iranians are quick to claim, hey, we did that. This one, they didn't claim that quickly. And there is a chance that was actually just a mid-air collision.
That could be very well the case. One thing we didn't talk about, but we'll do on another show, what would a deal even look like, and could we trust Iran? Save it for a conversation for another day. Hal Kempfer, thank you so much. Good seeing you.
Good seeing you, Jesse.